Well, welcome. Thank you so much for coming tonight to join us to learn a little bit more about the college essay process. We're going to focus on not just the main college essay, but supplemental essays a little bit. And you're going to walk away today with some guidelines that will help you get started if you haven't actually started yet, or maybe you're in the middle of the process and you need a little bit of guidance. Some what's the analogy here? The bumper lane in a bowling alley, just so you know what direction to go in as you move forward. And so we are going to cover a lot today. You can sit back, relax, have a glass of water, some tea as you listen to us give you good information, but it might be useful to also jot down some notes, whether it's on a pad of paper or typing along as we discuss the college essay process. And I'm here with my colleague Amy, who will introduce herself, and then I'll introduce myself.
Hey there, I'm Amy, and I am one of the essay specialists at PrepMatters. And one of my favorite parts of working with students at PrepMatters is teasing out the story and helping students get their best part of their personalities on the page.
And I'm Jeff Knox. I'm the Director of Educational Planning at PrepMatters. I am an educational counselor as well. I work directly one-on-one with students, and I like to say I help students make decisions about their high school education plan and the college admissions process as they go through it. And if you have any questions about what you learn here tonight, you can contact us directly via email. Our emails are on the screen. We're also on Twitter. If anyone out there is still on Twitter, you're welcome to tweet directly at us or follow us. I like to message pretty regularly about the state of college admissions. And if you have general questions about PrepMatters, our email for our kind of general department is at the bottom of the screen, edplanning@prepmatters.com. And of course, you can still call us at 301-951-0350. And with that, let's move directly into the topic, the college essay. And if you've been to our webinars before, we almost always start with a really important academic periodical from the National Association of College Admission Counseling, NACAC. And they have the Journal of College Admission, and every year one of the editions is the state of college admission. And in that edition, they almost always have this table, which are factors in admission decisions. And I like to show it not because this is the secret formula for college admissions, like every college will kind of follow these guidelines. But it gives you a sense of all the different moving parts and components that create an application package. And it also reminds you, hopefully, that each piece is just a piece. And usually no admissions decision hinges on just one of these pieces. It's a compilation of all of these various components. And usually there's a general impression that will either be in your favor or not, made up of a number of factors, not just one. And so the essay is just one of those factors. And even though there are some schools out there that don't even require essays, there's literally no essay writing at all. And then there are some schools that rely really heavily on essays in addition to grades and in some cases scores these days and letters of recommendation and all that good stuff. It's probably a good idea to assume that your essay will play an important role in admissions, because why wouldn't you? That's going to motivate you to create a piece that's useful to admissions, that's meaningful to you, that you think is going to position your application well. But it's also helpful to remember that not everything comes down to whether you have the comma in the right place. And one thing that Amy and I see a lot is maybe an undue amount of stress on the essay, and perhaps it's because a lot of the stuff that is on this list you've already taken care of. You know what your grades are if you're a rising senior for freshman, sophomore, junior year. You maybe already have SAT or SAT scores, and even if you don't, maybe you're wondering whether they're important or not. News alert, they're still important, and you should still think about that. But obviously there are pathways to college admissions that do not need tests any longer because of the current pandemic. And in any case, it's a careful balance to remember that there are a lot of things that make up a college application process, but you obviously want to treat this piece of the application process seriously, and it's the thing that's most in your control right now. You can work on this still. It's not submitted yet. You've got a lot of time still, and some of these other things are maybe no longer in your control, and perhaps that's part of why it feels a little tense. Interestingly, 56.4% of colleges place at least moderate importance on the application essay. So probably safe to bet that that your the list of colleges that you're applying to, which are probably represented in this very robust survey, are looking forward to seeing what you have to write. And that's just a reminder that in most cases, your grades and the strength of your curriculum are really the biggest factor in an admissions decision, and that shouldn't shock anyone. You can't really get away with focusing on just your essay to compensate for your good academic work. And you still have another at least marking period, perhaps full semester of grades to showcase to colleges, whether you're applying early to a college or you're waiting for that regular decision deadline. That first marking period of grades senior year, if you're a rising senior, is still significant. So you're not off the hook just yet, despite whether your school is going virtual, fully remote, or some kind of hybrid model. It can feel like this has to be the best piece of writing you have ever written. It can feel stressful, but Aimee and I are here to help you not panic, to take this at a manageable and leisurely pace, but also at a pace that's going to keep you at a good clip, so that ultimately you get a solid version of your main essay and perhaps some outlines of your supplements before you walk in or log on to senior year. And we'll talk about the timeline in a little bit, but that's generally what you should be aiming for, is to have a pretty solid, not final draft, but a draft that you're maybe tweaking before you start senior year, and a sense of how you want to approach your supplemental essays, which for most schools will be released, the prompts for which will be released in early to mid-August. So, Aimee, the Common App essay prompts have been out for this class of 2021, the rising seniors, since February, but they haven't changed in years. I think 5 years or something like that. And I always like to say that we don't really need to look at them first. Do you agree?
I totally agree on that. They just don't matter because look at number 7 over there. It's the topic of your choice. They give you, I believe that they give you these topics in order to sort of guide any thoughts that you might have. But that's sort of where I come in, because I'm able to talk with you and help you figure out what your story is. I can't tell you how many times I have students who come in and say, oh no, I'm totally boring. I have nothing to say. So I have to address a prompt. You don't, and everybody has a story. I had a student do her essay on having dinner with her family every night. It was the most meaningful thing to her. And it came out beautifully and really got her story on the page. So the prompts are secondary.
I think that's really important, because students have been conditioned by English teachers like the two of us, right? Mm-hmm. That have taught them to answer the prompt, stay focused, stay targeted, and so
answer the question asked.
Right, exactly. And so the students will come into sessions with us and say, "Okay, so which prompt should we pick?" I'm like, "Whoa, I don't even know what you're writing about yet." And this sounds hokey, but the prompt is already inside you, right? Because no admissions officer looks at which prompt you picked and says, "Okay, she picked number 4, a problem you hope to solve. So let's make sure that she stays on topic this whole time." Of course, you want to have a cohesive narrative, but whether you pick 1, 4, 7 topic of your choice, they just read it. They just read it and they walk away with an impression, and that's it. So the starting point are not the prompts. The starting point is that thing that you want admissions to get a glimpse of. And we're going to, a little bit later tonight, give you what I would call the real prompts for your main essay. Still, it's a little interesting to pick apart some of these prompts, because I think there's something to it in the history of how these prompts evolved. And I'll just focus on one, which is number 4, a problem you solved. I think the language there is a little bit more like, is there a problem that you have solved or would like to solve, big or small, and please tell us about it. And that number 4, before like 4 years ago when they switched it, used to be describe a place where you're perfectly content. Mm-hmm. And through popular demand from college counselors, college admissions officers, teachers, students, they went to the Common App and they said, please change this prompt, because it elicited boring essays about the library and grandma's attic and my bedroom, and it didn't give a glimpse into how students think. It didn't encourage that kind of writing. Number four, obviously, it directly asks you to talk about something analytical, and I think that is an important note because colleges do want to get a glimpse of how you think, how you analyze. Are you self-aware? And you can do that with any of these prompts. I'm not telling you that number four is a secret prompt to pick, but I think it is important that you ask yourself, am I demonstrating my power of thinking and analysis and ability to be self-aware through whatever I'm writing about? The Coalition app is another application platform, and I bring it up. It's not as popular as the Common App. The Common App has 900 schools associated with it. The Coalition app, I think, is somewhere like 90. But if you are local, if you're tuning in from an area nearby and you're interested in the University of Maryland, perhaps you're a Maryland resident, well then this is relevant because the University of Maryland to date, and maybe this will change later, but so far, is Coalition app exclusive. They only use the Coalition app, so you will need to set up a Coalition app if you're applying to the University of Maryland. Same deal here. Number five, topic of your choice. Everything we just said applies to the Coalition app as well. And the main essay is probably not the only essay you need to write. You don't just get away with one. And many schools will ask you to write school-specific essays. These are essays that go just to them. So that main essay you write goes to all of the schools that you're applying to generally, and then schools can layer more essay work on top of that. And here's are just a few examples of how creative schools can be. And in these cases, it probably is a good idea to answer the prompts, right? It makes sense. These are pretty specific, and schools are interested in seeing what you can do with your own creativity and navigating what they are positing in front of you. And then there are some more typical supplemental prompts. And Amy, do you mind just kind of running through these a little bit?
These are very, very common for schools to say, describe one of your extracurricular activities or intellectual pursuits. They have their list, your list of activities, but they want you to do a little more description on one of them or a little bit of extensive speaking about one of them. What do you want to study? That's often a little window into how you think. When you answer some of these, you have to think, what are they really looking to know from me? What do they really want to, why are they asking me this? The why us is, why do you want to go to X school? That's a little bit of a sticky wicket because you have to do a tiny bit of research into what the school is like or one thing that you might want to do there. And you definitely have to make sure that you, if you use the same ideas for more than one school, then you have to proofread. But these are pretty common, and sometimes the schools will have more than one supplemental essay. They'll have one of these common ones, one or two of these common ones, and then one that's a little bit more creative on the side as well. Not all of them. Every school's different, but you sort of have to be prepared.
I think Amy brings a really good point. In some cases, that what do you want to study question is exactly what it feels like. They want you to justify the academic program that you hope to be a part of. And that's particularly true of really specific and distinctive schools within a university system. So if you're applying for engineering or business or computer science or nursing or something, they want to know, do you really know what you're talking about here? Do you walk the walk when it comes to, I want to be a computer science major? But if you're applying to an arts and science school or a liberal arts college, they don't necessarily need to know for a fact, are you studying German or poetry or math or biology? Because it's really common to switch when you get there. I mean, I think it's something like 7 times. That's like a typical number of times that students will change their major. So to Amy's point, it's not answering the question in the way that you think they want you to pick a major, like, they need more poetry majors, so I'll give them that answer. It's how you think about that question. You don't actually need to know what you want to study. You might not, but I wouldn't say, I don't know, I'm undecided, and I haven't even thought about it. I would say, I don't know, I'm undecided. Here is what I've done so far to get myself closer to that understanding of what I want to study. And I'm still undecided, but here's what I've done so far. Here's how I've thought about this question to date.
There's one other thing that I wanted to add about that, Jeff, and that's that it's not just, some of the schools will say something like, why us, in terms of not just study plans, but also what you want out of the school. So it's important to know, kind of have an idea of why you're applying to the school. So really being specific and knowing what it is that you want, which is why PrepMatters is so good at helping students figure out their interests.
Yeah, I actually spend a lot of time on the why us kind of prompts, even when the essay word limit is like 100 words, which in some cases it is. A lot of students think that the main essay is the most important, and often it is, but sometimes these questions that admissions officers use to understand, does the student really understand, are they convincing that they know enough about my school to enroll, right? Georgia Tech actually just recently announced that they are no longer going to really look at the main essay. They have two short supplements, 150 words each, and one of them is why Georgia Tech, the other is what do you want to study. That's all they're going to look at, because they believe that they're going to get more useful information, more useful data from those pieces than the main essay. And that's just one example. There are schools that would be the other way around, but because there's no way to know that for every school, even if you do this for a living like Amy and I do, you want to treat every essay, whether it's a 100-word YS supplement or your main essay, seriously. And the shorter the essays, the more significant the words are, in my view. They're like a poem, like every word counts.
Every word
so even
counts.
those short little pieces you want to curate in an effective way. So let's talk about your audience. And the audience, if there are any parents listening, I'm sorry, but it's not your parents. It's not me or Amy. It's not your friends. It's not your English teacher. It's not even your college counselor. It is the admissions office. That is your audience. And hopefully you have resources who understand that and kind of know what admissions offices are looking for, and they're helping you speak to your audience through your writing. And your audience has a purpose as they read your essay. And we're going to talk to you right now about what that purpose is. It's really simple. The admissions office wants you to be able to graduate if you come to that school, if you enroll. They want you to do it in 4 years. You think they'd want you to stick around for like 6 or 10 for the tuition, but actually they're incentivized to get you out of there in 4 years. It enhances their rank and their academic reputation. And they want you to do it happily. So when you're thinking about your topic, when you're thinking about your message, which they're different, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, and you're thinking about just your overall impression that your essay conveys, these are the things that you kind of want to think about. And there's a way that we can break this down to help you understand how you might do that, right? They're looking for college-ready students, because these are the students who will graduate and graduate on time. And you can convey that through the sophistication of your topic and your message. You might have the topic of having dinner with your family, that example Amy brought up earlier. That's the topic. But then the message also needs to be there, and this is probably what was so beautiful to Amy, is that, okay, you tell an admissions officer all about the time you spend with your family at dinner, and then the admissions officer says, okay, that's nice, but so what? Why would I care? Whatever you say after that, however you answer that part, that's your message, and that needs to be in your essay as well.
Can I give you one more example of that?
Please, yes.
Yeah, I had a student a number of years ago who came to me with a draft of an essay already done, and it was this gorgeous description of the ballet. She is a ballerina, and she had been the star of the Nutcracker that year, and it was she had this description of the sets and the lighting and the music, blah 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 blah, but it didn't say anything about any sort of message. So we had to pull down a lot of that description in order to say, well, here's how I got to this point. Here's what it means to me to be a ballerina, something reflective, and here's why I'm not going to be working with it in college. So it's a very big difference.
Right, and I sometimes will call the message the so what, which is the admissions officer listening to your story and then saying, so what? And if you have that, then you're in a good space. The writing quality obviously impacts the impression of whether you're college ready. The and then this is what we were kind of talking about with message, that self-awareness, because the message should convey that you kind of have a sense of who you are, and you're articulating that to admissions, along with the power of analytical thinking. I mean, these are the kinds of messages, the impressions that admissions will be looking for. And many topics can help you accomplish this. They're also looking to create a community, and they craft a class to create a community, to contribute to their community. And so I'm a stickler for this. And I don't find a lot of exceptions with the students I work with, but I like my essays to show that you add value to the lives of other people around you, that people are better off for having met you. And there are many ways you can do that, but I without really any exception, I look for that message. And if there are two kind of secrets to a college essay, one would be authenticity, which we'll talk about a little bit later, but that's really important. And the second, I believe, is a message that you are other-centered, that you look for ways to contribute. And then there are like less tangible, like je ne sais quoi qualities, like likability. And then authenticity we'll bring up again, but a lot of authenticity has to do with the topic you choose, but also the voice with which you write. And that's probably an often overlooked piece. So let's talk about some other guidelines of what to do when you are moving through the essay piece. And we just talked about your audience, but it's also helpful to remember not just, we talked about the purpose that your audience has, but your audience is also not someone that always looks like the person on the screen here. And I'm talking about this picture that you see. The admissions officer could be someone who's newly graduated, maybe from that university. I don't know if you've been to any of these college visits in person when we lived on the planet before this one, or if you've done some virtual tours. But these admissions officers can be quite young. They're closer to age to students than they are to me. Dare I say, Amy? And you don't need to think too hard on that. I just don't want you to envision only curmudgeonly English teachers like me and Amy. They could be young, hip people, and it's actually not too hard to find. You can go to Google, type in the school name, and then admissions staff, and you can find the regional rep, the person who's responsible for your area, and actually get a sense of who that person is. I'm not telling you to go like stalk them on social media, but it's a useful tool. And in other webinars, we talk about demonstrating your interest by engaging directly with admissions officers, which that is totally appropriate now more than ever, because admissions officers are usually traveling the country recruiting, and now they're all at home and they're less busy and they're more available to engage with you directly. But that is a different topic, but still relevant to the idea of audience here. Plan ahead. I mean, Amy, can you talk a little bit about just process?
This is going to come up really quickly on you. And it's hard once that senior year starts, online or otherwise. It's hard to focus on the applications because there's so many things to do as a senior. And it takes longer than you think. The process includes a couple sessions of brainstorming, getting your ideas down, revising. So it takes a number of weeks. So if you plan on trying to hit those early decision deadlines, maybe November 1st even, you really need to get moving now. The best advice we can give you is to just do it early, and you'll be so relieved that you did it.
And fear not, because you are already planning ahead. You're here today thinking about your essay, and there are a number of rising seniors across the nation who just aren't. So the non-writing initial stage, the thinking about the plan, the brainstorming, I mean, that is as important as the actual writing and revising and editing, because the topic and the organization of your essay, that's all significant too. This is not like how you might approach an English paper or a history paper, where you just get the assignment, you outline it, you turn it into a draft, you turn it in, you get your grade, and then you throw it away. Like, this is a more organic process. It's like real writing, which we're going to talk a little bit about. And part of that, which can be so hard for so many students who are used to just like a linear process of brainstorm, outline, draft, final draft, and just like that's the writing process. Like that's like the poster you might remember in fifth grade where you see all the stages of the writing process. It doesn't always look that way, right? You might start with a topic, you try it out, it works for a little bit, but maybe it ends up not working, and it turns out like that it's better for your supplemental essays, and you kind of go back to the drawing board with an alternative topic, and you start again. And all I would say to you is you don't force a linear process just because it's more comfortable. Rather, if it's not linear, embrace it. Just embrace the mess, embrace the uncertainty. We all have practice in that now. And if you start early enough, you'll have the space to get to the kind of crisper version of your essay, and you won't feel rushed to just kind of go along with whatever your first idea was, because you don't have the time to explore other ideas that come up, and they only come to you because you've done the thinking about the original idea. And one of our colleagues likes to say that you can't say you've thought deeply about something unless you've written about it, which I love.
I love that.
You can think deeply about it, and then because you've thought deeply about it, you realize this isn't the right topic.
Right.
And go ahead.
I had a student today I was working with who started out with a topic, was pretty sure she came in with a topic, and we've changed the topic because it wasn't coming out right. So we tweaked it a bit, and she has a good draft going on right now. And today, in our session, we scrapped the whole first paragraph. We realized that the essay really starts at the second paragraph. So
that happens all the time.
Yeah. So and then we were able to add more detail and make the other parts richer because we didn't have to worry about the word count of that first paragraph.
Right. And that first paragraph was maybe just getting her gears turning until she landed at the beginning of that essay. And that happens a lot. Mm-hmm. Choose your editors wisely. So here, I think this is really important. It's so common to have too many cooks in the kitchen. You have perhaps mom, dad, English teacher, college counselor, Amy, your boyfriend who's visiting from his first year from college, your brother who just recently graduated, your uncle who's a professor somewhere. I mean, you have so many people look at this essay, and the danger isn't that you're going to get bad advice. You're probably going to get really good advice from a lot of different people. It's just going to be a lot of different advice. And you need to own how you're going to move forward with this essay. But what can be tempting is trying to incorporate all of the different good advice you hear into one essay, and it just overworks it. In my view, it kind of kills the essay. Yeah. And I don't know, Amy, if you've had that experience where you look at an essay and the student is really proud and excited to have so much help, but it's actually kind of backfired in a way.
Right, because there's a sentence here that doesn't match the sentence before it, but two different people said that those sentences were great. It's hard.
Right, and especially after you work with a student long enough, you kind of get a sense of what their authentic voice is, and then you see words and sentences that are like, that sounds like a 54-year-old dad lawyer voice. Is that what it is? And it's not because someone's trying to plagiarize or cheat or whatever, it's just they want help, but I like it when I see student essays that are a little, I call it schmutzy, a little like, you can tell that this is their authentic, kind of unadulterated voice. It's revised, it's edited, but it's, it still has the qualities of adolescence.
Right.
And for those of you who are an adolescent, but you just, because you're sophisticated, happen to sound like a 54-year-old lawyer, that's okay. Your letters of recommendation will probably allude to that. Your counselor letter of recommendation will allude to that. Your English grades will allude to that. Your SAT reading and writing section will allude to that. So fear not. But if you're wondering if your voice is sophisticated enough, you don't need to force this mini professor kind of style. It feels fake. You can write like you talk and then kind of clean it up a little bit later.
Yeah.
So I like to tell students, pick two people. Someone who knows you really well and someone who maybe doesn't know you as well, because that person who knows you really well will know whether that's your authentic voice. And maybe that is a close relative or an English teacher who's gotten to know you. And the person who doesn't know you really well can tell you whether the message that you're trying to convey is actually getting through to a stranger. Because someone who knows you well will superimpose what they already know about you over your language and kind of fill in the blanks, where a stranger doesn't have the ability to do that as well. So this is back to voice. Stay true to your voice, stay true to yourself. And I just talked a little bit about that. But you also can write like real writers. And if you read more than just essays for English class, then you know that real writers use dialogue. They use intentional sentence fragments. You can have a one-word paragraph even. I mean, there's so many different stylistic choices. Amy and I were talking about this earlier, just like the difference between grammar and stylistic freedom. And you can take those liberties as long as they're deliberate and they work. And if you're not sure, well, that's where your trusted editors come into play. But you don't have to force this kind of like academic English teacher voice that maybe you've been trained to do.
I always talk to students about that. This is flexing a different muscle, than writing muscle, than you've used before.
That's a great way to put it. So things to avoid, and this is a really common question. What are topics that I should avoid automatically just because they're overused? And I think there are topics that you don't have to automatically cancel or X out, but you should scrutinize. You should really think about and maybe get someone to help you decide whether your version of that topic is just so different from all the others that just are flooding college admissions offices that you need to rely on that topic, or maybe there's something else that's just going to be better because when you're an admissions officer and some of these people are reading literally, I'm not exaggerating, I mean literally in the literal sense, 50 essays a day, maybe even more. If they start an essay and they see that it's about a sports injury, it's really easy after the first paragraph to say to yourself, I've already read this, so I'm not going to spend the minutes I need to move on reading something that I already kind of get the gist of when this essay is already kind of telling me I'm not going to get any new information that I haven't seen from other students. So that impression can come through in the topic. So if you are looking at this list and you're like, oh my gosh, I was going to write about the death of my grandparent, now I can't. That's not necessarily the case. There are always exceptions, but I would go to an advisor and kind of work through this. And one of the most, what's the word I'm looking for, anticipated overused topics is the coronavirus. And because that's an anticipated overused topic, both the Common App and the Coalition App have teased out for the class of 2021 a separate COVID-19 related statement option that you have as a kind of an escape valve, so that if you need or want to add context to your application related to coronavirus, you have this special space for it. Does that mean you're not allowed to acknowledge coronavirus in any of your other essays? No, you absolutely can. And many of the students I'm working with will give a nod because some of the things they're writing about have been impacted in one way or another because of coronavirus. But the topic isn't coronavirus. It might just acknowledge it somewhere in the essay, as like in a sentence. If you have a need to acknowledge coronavirus and its impact in your life, or if you want to provide context to how you've spent your time, if you are lucky enough to say, I'm healthy, my parents are employed, and I've just been kind of stuck at home, well then what did you do with that extra time? And perhaps did you find ways to be useful to people who weren't as lucky during this time? It is optional, it is short, and it's not really an essay, it's more of a statement. And I'll probably encourage all of my students to include something, because my view is that the more data you send to an admissions officer, the better. They get to decide what data is helping to build a case to admit you and what's not. But admissions officers approach applications with the idea of building a case to admit, not to deny. So they are looking for reasons to admit, and so why not give them every opportunity to build that case. The Coalition App is doing something similarly, but they actually get a little bit more granular and have all of these different these items to check if this was something relevant to you. I just think that's kind of interesting. The Common App doesn't do it this way, but the Coalition App does. But looking at this and looking at the Coalition App, it might just trigger some messages that you didn't think to convey in that statement for the Common App. So it's kind of an interesting list here. And then generally speaking, a lot of schools from the counselor side of things, the college counselor, will have ways to contextualize the impact on your school. So did you go fully remote for spring semester of this past academic year? And all of you did, but like to what extent did that change the academic experience? Were you on Zoom from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. every day and grades were exactly as they were before and you have full letter grades and lots of academic assignments? Or did your school offer pass-fail or a more kind of forgiving academic situation? All that context should be conveyed by your counselor. But if for whatever reason you're not sure whether that your school is going to convey that, or you just want to make sure that your perspective on your academic experience, perhaps you even supplemented your academic experience because you had a little bit more time, you'll have that option to express that here as well. So, Aimee, have you run into this common issue?
I've run into it a couple of times, and it can be a part. Focusing on childhood is not a good idea for the main part of the essay, but if there's something that has impacted you greatly from your childhood, it's better to describe all of the impacts. So again, focusing on what the admissions officers really need to know or want to know is the moving forward part. So you don't want to just describe how playing with dolls or playing with Legos was the biggest part of your childhood. Well, okay, you can have a paragraph about that, but how has it impacted you now?
Well, and let me just like edit you a little bit, and I mean this facetiously, but like if you are gonna write about Legos, throw that in the overused topic thing. Like any budding engineers out there, like just cut the Legos altogether. 'Cause
Oh,
it's so
right.
common, so
Yeah.
common that. But Amy's exactly right. I mean, they want to know who you are today. They don't need to know who you were when you were 7. But if something that happened before high school impacted you in a way that resonates today, then it's fine to acknowledge that. Kind of similar to what I said about coronavirus. You can acknowledge it, but don't let that be the topic. Just like the soccer tournament you had in 7th grade is not the topic, and perhaps not even the detail there. It's a really common kind of misstep in my view, because we all have really cute and fun and awesome stories from when we were 7, and parents love those stories because it reminds them of who you were before you were an angsty teenager. But admissions officers usually want to get a glimpse of who you are today.
I ran into that with the dinner table conversation with the student. She was able to have a line in there. We used to throw food at each other, but now we don't do that anymore. You know, that kind of thing.
Right. Sometimes essay prompts ask you, like, who inspires you? Tell us about the kind of person that you want to become and who gave you that idea. And they ask you, to talk about someone else. But the misstep here could be that you create a whole essay that's about someone else. And then admissions says to themselves, wow, this person sounds great. We should admit them, not you. And so always make sure that this essay, every prompt, even the why do you want to come to our college essay? They don't need to hear about them. They don't need a commercial for their school. They know who they are. Every essay is revealing something about you.
Yeah.
And I think I made my point there, but just make sure you're doing that. So I feel like this is becoming more and more, year by year, a more relevant kind of thing to avoid, because in the last few years there have been a lot of people who have felt passionate about many topics, whether it's political or social or public health these days, and it's a good thing to care a lot and have passion and even have the sense to have an emotional response to some of the stuff that's going on in the world. But in the college essay, this is not the best place to kind of let that out in the form of a rant, or even in some cases like in the form of therapy session. Remember, you have an admissions officer with a purpose here. And one of the things they want is for you to be likable. And people who rant, it doesn't always come off as likable. So it's absolutely okay to talk about social issues, political issues, public health interests. It's absolutely okay to talk about it, but I would recommend that you approach these in an intellectual and academic style and less of a judgmental style or a what's wrong with these people kind of thing, or like a I know best kind of deal. One example that I like to bring up for this is I had a student a few years ago now who was the president of both the high school Democrat club and the high school Republican club, which is just interesting in and of itself. And his essay was about that, but also about how to facilitate discussion between people who don't agree on things. And it came off not so likable because the style was just, no one understands how to do this, and I'm the only one who knows how to do this, and that's why I have to be the president of both of these clubs. And I don't think that's what he meant, and I don't think that's who he is, but it just read that way. And that's why a good editor, especially someone who doesn't know you as well, can just tell you with candor, hey, like this sentence just makes you sound kind of like a jerk. And if you're touching on these sensitive topics, you're a little bit more at risk of doing that, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't try. Just be mindful of your personality in the writing. We talked a little bit about this, but Amy, can we let them off the hook or free them from the 5-paragraph essay?
Oh yeah, I think that would just be a bad idea to do. We're not analyzing anything. There are no topic sentences and just supporting details. It should be an organic sort of narrative. So
that's a great word, organic.
Organic narrative. And we talk a lot about show, don't tell. Put us in the moment. Make me feel like I'm at that dinner table.
And for students who have who like the linear process, who like structure, who like a template, who want to be given the thesis statements, this will be tough, but it's worth struggling with. Because, like I said before, you can write like a real writer, and you should. The 5-paragraph essay is appropriate only for standardized test essays, really, or for English teachers who want you to use it for whatever reason. But once you leave high school, there's probably never going to be a reason for you to use it ever again. I don't think you should read your friends' essays or any essays, college essay examples, at all. And I don't think you should let them read yours. And I know, as a former English teacher, that the value of a model text, if I were teaching persuasive writing, I would show an example of persuasive writing. There's value there, but with this kind of writing, this genre of college essay writing, it does more harm than good in my experience, without exception. I have never met a student who has said, I've read a number of college essay examples, and now I feel better about my topic or clearer on how I'm going to approach my topic. Quite the opposite. I will work with students who feel pretty good about their essay, and then they read a whole bunch of other essays, and then they just second guess themselves, and they compare, and it's just not useful, because what one student wrote has no bearing on what you should write. The essay, I always think about applications as being a series of components that each has its own role. And so the role that your essay plays is distinctive and is impacted by the other pieces of your application. So even if there's a student who's writing about the same topic, the role of the essay that student's writing about could be very different. We also have different voices and personalities, and this is where I see students say, oh, I read like a really funny essay, so therefore I have to be funny, right? And it's just like, no, you don't, especially if that's not naturally who you are, or if it's not appropriate to the topic, or if it feels forced, or if it's just, maybe you are funny in real life, but not in writing. So I feel very strongly about this. Don't do it. Don't read other essays.
Yeah, especially at the beginning when you're just starting, you read this polished essay and yours is a little bit messy so far, and you just end up feeling badly, but that you're comparing your start to their finish.
And similarly, when other people read your essay, who's not a trusted advisor, I'm talking about friends here, nothing good comes of that usually either. One, I think this is an intensely personal process to begin with, kind of like a report card. You don't at least you shouldn't, really share your grades with your friends. And just like, this process, you can kind of keep close to the vest. But when you have a friend read it, you either are going to get advice that, again, is creating too many cooks in the kitchen, or you're going to get advice that makes you second guess yourself because that student, for whatever reason, thinks he or she knows what she's talking about when maybe he or she has no idea what she's talking about. And so stick with the trusted advisors to read your essay, the people who have the experience to help you in a meaningful way.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think this is the last one in the avoid category, but that idea of authenticity is so important. And what I mean by sacrificing authenticity for originality is trying to figure out what your gimmick is before you even know what your topic and message are, right? So saying to yourself, I have to be funny, or I have to be shocking, or I have to include whatever before you even know what the whole kind of takeaway you want to be for your main essay. And so getting lost in the weeds on that, to Amy's point earlier, too early in the process, it paralyzes students. And so that permission to be authentic means that you can kind of be, in the beginning stages, a little sloppy and a little unsure and a little unclear, and then over time you kind of lacquer on the layers of finesse and sophistication, but don't get caught up in the details before you know where you're actually heading. And that's kind of the way I always put it with students. Like, let's figure out where you're heading, and it'll be a lot easier to get there rather than just like starting. So let's just review some of the big ideas here. When we think about the application package, go back to thinking about that table we showed you in the beginning, right? Lots of different moving parts here. And if you're a rising senior, some of those parts are shored up already. They're concretized. So where does your essay fit into that? What role do you want your essay to play? Be careful about how many people you choose as trusted advisors, and think about which ones you are going to consistently lean on for advice as you move through this essay process. Keep the big picture in perspective. The essay isn't everything, but treat it seriously, of course. And authenticity. If you would like some one-on-one help with your essay process, whatever stage you're in, maybe you have no idea, you haven't started a thing, you don't even know what you're going to write about, or maybe you have a final draft and you think it's pretty good, we welcome you to reach out to us, and we're happy to meet with you one-on-one, complimentary. Amy will do it. We have a number of other essay specialists who will do it. And you can just kind of sit down and chat about your ideas, or even look at a draft, and we're happy to help. And if you'd like to continue, then of course we'll continue with you. But even if you just want a half-hour complimentary meet and greet, email us at edplanning@prepmatters.com. Or if you like what Amy or I said tonight, or if you didn't like it and you want to reach out to us, or if we confused you in any way, you can email us directly, you can tweet at us, you can call us. We hope that you found this useful tonight. Thank you so much for coming, and we wish you the best as you move forward.